Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, the UK is the latest member of a club no one wants to join.
So megafire is 10,000 hectares, so we saw over 10,000 hectares burning on the Dartmoor fire, for example, up in Scotland last year.
More on wildfires later. Let's start, though, with the uplands. Broadly, that's places above 1,000 feet or 300 metres. So think the Brecon Beacons, the Peak District and the Highlands, many of the most stunning places in the country. But because of their geography, they're generally harder places to farm. Well, this week here on Farming Today, it's all about the uplands. MPs on the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee are preparing a report on the challenges facing upland farmers in England and how the government can best support them. It follows the publication of the Land Use Framework, which identified upland areas as places which could be the most suitable for delivering climate and nature targets. Professor Julia Aglianby from Cumbria University, who's also Executive Director of the Foundation for Common Land and a farmer in the Lake District.
Farmers in the uplands are different because the level of productivity in the uplands is inevitably lower. The quality of the soils, the weather, the altitude. We have long winters. The terrain is hard. You often have to walk up the mountains. You can't go in a Land Rover. So everything is more costly and more time consuming when you're farming in the uplands.
And that's why over the years, under many different systems, there has been a different deal for the uplands. In England, as we've had this transition away from the European system of a subsidy paid directly to farmers to public money for public goods, what impact has that had?
Well, in the uplands, it's not only the farming is harder, but we actually produce an awful lot of public benefits, and those aren't paid for. So the intention was that the uplands would benefit because they produce nature, they produce lots of climate, they produce places for recreation, and all these are public goods. But what's happened is the old payments have been phased out, but the new payments haven't been phased in.
There's been a different and a slower approach to the change in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Are you expecting different outcomes there for upland farmers?
If you're in Scotland or in Wales, you will be cushioned against that because you still have an element of direct payment. And we don't have that anymore in England. So this year, all farmers will only receive £600, while previously, if we go back to 2021, the average hill farm received £26,500. If you've lost £26,000 off your bottom line, you are really suffering.
We asked DEFRA about this. DEFRA told us we're backing British farmers as part of a new era of partnership with a record £11.8 billion investment. They also point to recent changes in the Sustainable Farming Incentive, which are designed to ensure as many farmers as possible can benefit from the agreements. And we are exploring new ways of addressing the distinct challenges facing upland farms to shape a stronger, more sustainable future for these landscapes.
That all sounds lovely in theory. In practice, the reality is quite different. Farmers were early adopter of environmental stewardship schemes. The environmental stewardship doesn't pay nearly as much as the new environmental land management payments. So farmers are effectively trapped in old schemes. They're not, therefore, eligible to apply for the Sustainable Farming Incentive. And also, while it is great news that SFI is reopening, we expect later this month, this first tranche will only be for farms that are under 50 hectares, and the average hill farm is 171 hectares, according to DEFRA statistics. It's not going to compensate for a lack of annual management payments reaching farmers' bank accounts. We should be paying farmers who provide nature, climate, access to our stunning landscapes.
Julia Aglianby there, and more on uplands all week. Now, something upland farmers may well be interested in, as it's all about sheep. A £3 million government-backed project has been looking at how methane emissions can be reduced in sheep. Various breeds from Scotland to the south coast of England were tested as part of this research, which has gathered data from 13,500 lambs. The scientists involved in the Breed for Change programme hope farmers will now use this data to reduce their impact on the climate. Bob Harkenhill reports.
For 3 years, geneticists and researchers have been travelling the country, measuring methane emissions from 40 different flocks of sheep, using what's called a portable accumulation chamber.
This is a trailer that we tow behind a pickup. On it, we've got 12 little compartments. We take the sheep up the ramp, put them each one into its individual compartment for 50 minutes, and we use that to measure the amount of methane and carbon dioxide that they are breathing or burping out.
Dr. Janet Roden is a geneticist with Innovis, a sheep breeding service which led the research.
We get a measure of their inherent ability to produce methane, which is a gas they just produce naturally from the grass they eat.
What have been the conclusions then?
Our main conclusions are there's a lot of variation between sheep in the amount of methane they produce, and that is to some extent heritable. So we know we can breed from the sheep that produce less methane. But we also know that we need to ensure that we're breeding productive sheep that have lower methane. Actually, there's more variation within breeds than between breeds. So every breed will have sheep that are lower emitters, and every breed could breed from them.
Matt Harding farms sheep near Nuneaton in Warwickshire. His Aberfield flock were part of the methane trial.
Do you think some farmers are a little bit cynical about it because they would argue that there are far more emissions from other sectors of society?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't disagree with them. That's a very fair argument, and I think that's probably true. I just think if we've got an opportunity within the sheep industry to show that we can improve our emissions, then we should take it, and we can be part of that good news story and improve what we're doing, and that can only be a benefit.
So I'm Nicola Lamb. I'm a researcher at Scotland's Rural College, SRUC.
Where do we go from here then?
One of the things that we've looked at is relationships of methane with the other important traits, so production and health traits. And we've found that there aren't really any antagonistic relationships there. So the relationships between better production, better health and reduced methane are favourable. We can include methane in our breeding goals without having a negative effect. So I think we would encourage breeders to take up the tools that are going to be available after this project. So the breeding index that we're going to be able to provide to breeders to try and reduce methane in their own flocks while maintaining productivity and good health. We're partners in some international projects, so we are really trying to look at this on a global scale. So if we think about how many sheep there are in the world, that is going to make a big impact.
That report from Bob Huckenhall. The latest analysis of wildfires show that last year the UK recorded its highest burnt area on record, including the country's first documented megafire in Scotland. Researchers from the University of East Anglia led a team of international scientists looking into last year's fires around the globe. They say wildfires are getting more extreme, costly and disastrous. Though less land was affected, globally the fires resulted in more than 300,000 evacuations and the deaths of more than 90 people. Dr. Matt Jones from UEA.
Climate change certainly plays a role here. We're seeing an increase in the frequency of both very wet periods and very dry periods. We have a seesaw effect where we have vegetation fuels accumulating very productively during wetter than usual growing seasons, and then that's quite quickly followed by dry seasons, which dry out the fuels, dry out the soils, and ultimately makes landscapes more prone to burning than they were in sort of climates of the past.
What's a megafire exactly?
So megafire is sort of a threshold size of 10,000 hectares. So we saw over 10,000 hectares burning on the Dartmoor fire, for example, up in Scotland last year.
Now, the trend across the world last year, you say in this research, is for less area burnt, but at a higher cost, both in terms of lives lost and disrupted, and also financially. Why is that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it just goes to show really that not all fires are equal. Over time, we see year-to-year variability in the extent of area burned by fires. That's often dominated at the global scale by what's going on in the African savannas, where over 60% of burned area actually occurs annually on average, whereas the fires that really matter for society and for the very harmful effects that we experience as communities really depends where the fires happen and how they intersect with people and also how they behave. So globally we're seeing trends towards fires that tend to be larger, they tend to burn more intensely, they're also tending to increasingly intersect with where people live. The LA wildfires in 2025, January, really stick in the mind because this actually became the fifth most costly event on record in terms of insured losses. 31 people died.
To try and improve the situation then, do we, both here in the UK and across the world, need to manage land differently?
I really think the balance of the most effective things that we can do depends where you are in the world. So from a UK context, given that climate change is a factor, really the best thing that we can do to help is to cut down on our emissions. There are, of course, things we can do to protect areas locally. So, managing the fuels, ensuring that we record where the most risky locations on the landscape are developing and really managing those areas. And if we then think more broadly about areas of the world that are very fire prone, California, parts of Australia, they have prescribed burn programs and other fuel management programs in place. They also have initiatives such as total fire bans on days when essentially the weather presents extreme risk of wildfires, and they know how to respond to those events. Of course, that's something that we need to be considering in the future when we think about future risk of wildfires in the UK as well.
Dr. Matt Jones there. Now, just before we go, we are looking for nominations in the BBC Food and Farming Awards. Farming Today and The Archers have again teamed up for the Farming for the Future Award. We're looking for people who are making farming more resilient and sustainable, both financially and environmentally. Just go to bbc.co.uk/food awards, where you'll find all the categories and the terms and conditions and privacy notice. Entries close at midday on the 15th of June. Fellow judge Mally Harris, who plays Natasha in The Archers, and I look forward to hearing from you. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.